Hey guys, how you going? I got snail mail yesterday, sorry, and I got this sticker, and it's absolutely beautiful. I couldn't believe it when I got it. I love it. I love it. It means a whole lot to me, guys. And that's from Jennifer in Spokane, Washington, is it? Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. Yes, and snail mail will take a very long time to get here. I've been waiting about nearly 3.5 weeks for something else from the USA as well. So it will eventually get here. It's just a matter of when it will get here. So, and I apologise about all the noise outside. It's quite unavoidable. Okay, this is the FOIA documents from cloning. Now, I just sat here and did about an hour video and realised it had not recorded. Oh, dear. Anyway, I'm going to try and attempt to read this, and I might have to break it into parts because, as I said, I've just been going for an hour and it didn't record. Okay, human cloning, the summary. In December 2005, an investigation by Seoul National University, South Korea, found that scientist Hwang Woo-suk had fabricated results on deriving patient-matched stem cells from cloned embryos, a major setback for the field. In May 2005, Hwang had announced a significant advance in creating human embryos using cloning methods and in isolating human stem cells from cloned embryos. These developments have contributed to the debate in the 109th Congress on the moral and ethical implications of human cloning. Scientists in other labs, including Harvard University and the University of California at San Francisco, intend to produce cloned human embryos in order to derive stem cells for medical research on diabetes, Parkinson's disease, and other diseases. And I don't think they need to do this. That's not what they're doing it for. I don't believe that's what they're doing it for. President Bush announced in August 2001 that for the first time federal funds would be used to support research on human embryonic stem cells, but funding would be limited to existing stem cell lines. Federal funds cannot be used for the cloning of human embryos for any purpose, including stem cell research. In July 2002, the President's Council on Bioethics released its report on human cloning, which unanimously recommended a ban on reproductive cloning, and, by vote of 10-7, a 4-year moratorium on cloning for medical research purposes. The ethical issues surrounding reproductive cloning, commodification, safety, identity, and therapeutic cloning, embryos, mortal status, relief of suffering, impact various proposals for regulation, restrictions, bans, and uses of federal funding. In January 2002, the National Academies released scientific and medical aspects of human reproductive cloning. It recommended that the US ban human reproductive cloning aimed at creating a child. It suggested the ban be enforceable and carry substantial penalties. The panel noted that the ban should be reconsidered within 5 years. However, the panel concluded that cloning to produce stem cells should be permitted because of the potential for developing new therapies and advancing biomedical knowledge. And what's the bet that they made people out of this? On May the 24th, 2005, the House passed H.R. 810, Castle. Interesting word, Castle. That's in a lot of Q posts, but it says Castle Rock, Castle, there's lots of different ones, which would allow federal support of research that uses human embryonic stem cells regardless of the date on which the stem cells were derived from a human embryo, thus negating the Bush stem cell policy limitation on existing stem cell lines. In July of 2006, the Senate passed H.R. 810, and President Bush vetoed it, the first veto of his presidency. An attempt in the House to override the veto was unsuccessful, action on the Weldon Bill, which passed in the House in the 108th Congress and stalled in the Senate, is also possible. It was reintroduced in the 109th Congress as H.R. 1357 and S. 658 Brownback. The bill bans the process of cloning as well as the importation of any product derived from an embryo created via cloning. It bans not only reproductive applications but also research on therapeutic uses, which has implications for stem cell research. Advocates of the legislative ban say that allowing any form of human cloning research to proceed raises serious ethical issues and will inevitably lead to the birth of a baby that is a human clone. Critics of the ban argue that the measure would curtail medical research and prevent Americans from receiving life-saving treatments created overseas. This report will be updated as needed. What's the bet they're not going to give us all the information? And there's contents, background, cloning attempts in South Korea, in the United States and United Kingdom, clone aid, advanced cell technology, others with human cloning intentions, federal policy involving human embryo research, ethics advisory board, NIH human embryo research panel, Dickey amendment, actions during the current Bush administration, state laws on cloning, congressional action, ethical and social issues, issues involving cloning for reproductive purposes, issues involving cloning for therapeutic purposes, and types of restrictions. Human cloning. Background. The term cloning is used by scientists to describe many different processes that involve making copies of biological material, such as a gene, a cell, a plant, or an animal. The cloning of genes, for example, has led to new treatments developed by the biotechnology industry for diseases such as diabetes and hemophilia. In the context of this report, a human embryo produced via cloning involves the process called somatic cell nuclear transfer, SCNT. In SCNT, the nucleus of an egg is removed and replaced by the nucleus from a mature body cell, such as a skin cell. In cloning, the embryo is created without sexual reproduction. There is no joining of egg and sperm. Concern over the possibility of producing a human clone increased with the announcement on February 24, 1997, that scientists in Scotland had used SCNT in 1996 to produce the first cloned adult mammal, Dolly the sheep. Ian Wilmot's group at the Rosalind Institute in Edinburgh removed the nucleus from a sheep egg and replaced it with the nucleus of a mammary gland cell from an adult sheep. The resulting embryo was then transferred to the uterus of a surrogate sheep. A total of 277 such embryos were transferred, but only one lamb was born. Analysis of the Dolly's genetic material confirmed that she was derived from the sheep mammary cell. Dolly was euthanized on February 14, 2003, after developing a lung infection, although some claim that her somewhat early death at 6 years was related to being a clone. Scientists at the Rosalind Institute believe her ailment may be due to the fact that she was raised indoors for security reasons, rather than as a pastured sheep, which can live to 11 or 12 years of age. Although scientists have been successful in using SCNT to produce other animals, such as a cat, goat, cow, horse, mule, pig, mouse and rabbit, the efficiency of the procedure is still very low and frequently results in abnormal development. Could that be like things that have washed up offshore near Plum Island or anything like that? If you don't know about that, look into Plum Island. There's some weird stuff that's washed up on shores around that area. Weird animals. Okay. Proponents maintain that one day cloning will be very useful for a number of agricultural applications, including the improvement of livestock. Currently, cloned mice are used for basic research on human health implications. Oh, there's so much wrong with that. The improvement of livestock. Well, I wouldn't want to eat a cow. Oh, no. How long have they been doing this for? Oh, I don't want to think about that. Cloning attempts in South Korea. Charges of ethical and scientific misconduct have clouded the reputation of scientists involved in deriving stem cells from human cloned embryos. I'm missing these bits because they are references, okay? In February 2004, scientists at the Seoul National University and SNU in South Korea announced the first isolation of stem cells from a cloned human embryo. In May 2005, this same group announced they had achieved major advances in the efficiency of creating human cloned embryos using SCNT and in isolating human stem cells from the cloned embryos. These 11 new stem cell lines were derived using cells from patients with either spinal cord injury, diabetes, or an immune deficiency, and offered the hope of one day providing treatments with the patient-matched cells. The team attributed the improved success rate in part to the use of freshly harvested eggs from younger fertile women instead of leftover eggs from older women who received fertility treatments. However, serious concerns about the achievements of the SNU group began in November 2005 when a co-author of the 2005 paper, Gerald Shatton, of the University of Pittsburgh, accused Woo Suk Hwang. Now they've changed his name around. It was Hwang Woo Suk. The lead... These names are... Come on, Gerald Shatton and Woo Suk Hwang. Come on. The lead researcher of the SNU group of ethical misconduct. In violation of some ethical standards and contrary to statements made in the 2005 paper, junior scientists in the SNU lab secretly donated their own eggs for the experiments, and they, along with other women, received payment for their role. The accusation halted plans for a collaboration between the SNU scientists and US and UK labs that had been announced 1 month earlier and resulted in Hwang resigning from all public positions on November the 24th, 2005. On December the 12th, 2005, Shatton asked his name be removed from the 2005 paper when he learned that the work may have been fabricated. In early December, scientists in South Korea began questioning the validity of photographs and other scientific evidence presented in the 2005 paper, and called for an independent analysis of the data. The University of Pittsburgh and SNU began separate investigations into the charges. On December the 15th, 2005, another co-author of the 2005 paper, Sung-il Ro, I think that's what it says. It's cut off. It seems to be cut off right here, but it looks like an I and an L. Sung-il Ro stated to the Korean media that the research had been fabricated and that the 2005 paper should be retracted. Hwang agreed to the retraction on December 16th but continued to defend the scientific results. A preliminary report released on December the 23rd, 2005 by SNU stated that 9 of the 11 stem cell lines described in the 2005 paper were deliberately fabricated, and the remaining 2 stem cell lines were still under investigation. On December the 29th, 2005, Seoul National University stated that the remaining stem cell lines were not patient-matched and were not derived through cloning. On January 10th, 2006, SNU stated that the results of the 2004 paper, which reported the first derivation of stem cells from a cloned human embryo, were also a deliberate fabrication. Cloning attempts in the United Kingdom and United States. Scientists in the United Kingdom at the University of Newcastle and the University of Edinburgh, and scientists in the United States at Harvard University, Advanced Cell Technology, and the University of California in San Francisco are working on deriving patient-matched stem cells from cloned human embryos. In the United Kingdom, scientists perform human cloning and embryonic stem cells research are regulated by the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Authority, HFEA. A team of scientists headed by Alison Murdoch at the University of Newcastle received permission from HFEA to start therapeutic cloning experiments in August 2004. In May 2005, the team announced that it had created a cloned human embryo, but has not yet reported success in isolating stem cells from a cloned human embryo. A research team headed by Ian Wilmer at the University of Edinburgh also is seeking permission from HFEA to begin working on SCNT experiments using human embryos. Scientists at the Harvard Stem Cell Institute intend to produce human clone embryos for research study on juvenile diabetes, Parkinson's disease, and several other diseases. In November 2003, the research group, headed by Douglas Melton and Kevin Egan, submitted their proposal to a Harvard committee composed of ethicists, scientists, and public policy experts. Preliminary permission to proceed with the research was granted in January 2005, provided that a number of specific restrictions were followed and approval was received from a second committee charged with safeguarding the use of human subjects in research. The restrictions include limitations on the developmental age of the cloned embryos used in experiments, a prohibition on reproductive cloning, and a limitation on paying only for the medical expenses of women who donate eggs. In June 2006, after more than 2.5 years, the Harvard group announced they had received final approval in the review process that looked at ethical, legal, and intellectual property issues and involved 8 different boards and committees at 5 separate institutions. In May 2006, scientists at the University of California in San Francisco, the UCSF, and Advanced Cell Technology ACT in Worcester, MA, I don't know, because Worcestershire is different. Worcester. Did I say that right? MA. Independently announced that they would resume their efforts to produce cloned human embryos for research purposes. Both UCSF and ACT, say below, had been working separately on such experiments prior to the February 2004 South Koreans' announcement of cloning success, but subsequently suspended their work in the case of ACT due to lack of funding and the case of UCSF due to lack of success. Clonaid. On December the 27th, 2002, a representative of Clonaid announced the birth of the first cloned human, a 7-pound baby girl nicknamed Eve. They're not trying to play God at all, are they? You're kidding me. The first cloned human and they named her Eve. That'd be right. The baby was born on December 26, 2002 at an undisclosed location outside the United States. Although the company offered no proof of its claim, Dr. Brigitte Boiselier, managing director of Clonaid, stated that genetic tests would show that the baby is a clone of the 31-year-old American woman who is the birth mother. To date, the test results have not been released. The company claims that the parents via the test result could lead to legal actions and loss of custody of the child. Okay, this was back in 2002. What's their excuse now? It's 18 years later. The child will be well over 18. The Clonaid website indicates that 13 cloned babies are now alive, and that each month between 10 and 15 implantations will be performed. Okay, so in 2002, 13 cloned babies existed, and every month between 10 and 15 would be performed after that. It doesn't say that 10 to 15 would be successful, but that's a lot of people if they manage to successfully do it. Anyway, in the Clonaid laboratory. Clonaid was founded in 1997 by the leader of the Raelians, an international sect of 55,000 people in 84 countries, which claims that life on Earth was created via genetic engineering by an human extraterrestrial race. Is this a cult? I don't know, I'm just asking. The Food and Drug Administration, FDA, is investigating the company's actions. The agency would consider any human cloning activity to be illegal if performed in the United States. In April 2001, the FDA investigated a clone-aid laboratory in Nitro WV. The laboratory closed shortly thereafter. It would have just moved underground. Advanced Cell Technology. On November the 25th, 2001, Advanced Cell Technology, ACT of Massachusetts, announced that it created the world's first human embryos produced via cloning. ACT used two techniques, SCNT and parthenogenesis, to produce human embryos. ACT researchers obtained eggs from 7 women ages 24 to 32 who were paid $3,000 to $5,000. In the SCNT approach, scientists removed the nucleus from 19 eggs and replaced it with a nucleus from another adult cell. The nucleus of a skin cell was used for 11 eggs, and for the remaining 8 eggs, cumulus cells were used. Eggs that received a skin cell nucleus did not divide. 7 of the eggs with the cumulus cell nucleus began to divide, but division stopped after the 4 to 6 cell stage. In parthenogenesis, an egg cell is treated with chemicals causing it to divide without being fertilized by sperm. ACT exposed 22 human eggs to the chemicals. After 5 days, 6 eggs had matured into a larger mass of cells before division stopped. None of the embryos developed by ACT divided sufficiently to produce stem cells. ACT suspended its work in 2004. The goal of ACT's work was to produce human embryonic stem cells and develop new therapies for diseases such as diabetes and Parkinson's disease, which I believe there are already cures for. It's just that they haven't released them, and I don't think it's anything to do with doing this. Scientists believe that stem cells transplanted into a patient could treat disease or injury by replacing damaged tissue. If the cell nucleus used in SCNT is from the patient, the stem cells would be genetically identical to the patient, recognized by the patient's immune system, and would avoid any tissue rejection problems that could occur in other stem cell therapeutic approaches. Because of this, many scientists believe that SCNT technique may provide the best hope of eventually treating patients using stem cells for tissue transplantation. Others with human cloning intentions. What, apart from people like Epstein, with enough money to be able to do it, and underground, or on his island underground, away from any prying eyes or government bodies and things like that. Within a year of the Dolly announcements, concern over human cloning were heightened when Dr. Richard Seed, see, look at these names, Richard Seed, a Chicago scientist, announced on January 7th, 1998, his intention to clone a human being. Sorry, I'm not picking on people's names, it's just that I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but with a lot of things there are some really weird names. So let me know if you've noticed that. Okay. He announced on January the 7th, 1998, his intention to clone a human being. In response, bills were introduced in the 105th Congress that would have banned human cloning indefinitely or imposed a moratorium. The legislation was opposed by a number of medical organisations, the biotechnology industry, and many scientists, and was not enacted. Others who have expressed an interest in reproductive cloning include Dr. Panos Zavos of the University of Kentucky, and Dr. Severino and Antonori, director of a fertility clinic in Rome. At one time, Dr. Zavos and Dr. Antonori were working together to help infertile couples have children via cloning. In April 2002, there were unconfirmed reports in the media that Dr. Antonori had implanted cloned human embryos in women. Dr. Antonori claimed there were 3 such pregnancies of 6 to 9 weeks duration, 2 in Russia and 1 in an Islamic state. His claim was disputed by his former partner, Dr. Zavos. In January 2004, Dr. Zavos announced that he had implanted a cloned embryo into a woman's uterus. 2 weeks later, he stated the pregnancy had failed. And they would say this if they are trying to hide it for any reason. Like if someone started looking at it. Because that legislation was opposed by all these people and was not enacted. Federal policy involving human embryo research. At the present time, no US law or regulations would prohibit all cloning research. However, federal funding of any type of research involving human embryos, starting with in vitro fertilization, IVF, then later cloning and the creation of stem cell lines from embryos, had been blocked by various policy decisions dating back 25 years. Yeah, but that's just for federal funding. Who's to say that these rich elite don't take it upon themselves well, they would be. Ethics Advisory Board. Following the birth of the first IVF baby, Louise Brown, in July 1978, the Federal Ethics Advisory Board, EAB, was tasked with considering the scientific, ethical, legal and social issues surrounding human IVF. The EAB released its report on May 4, 1979, which found that IVF research was acceptable from an ethical standpoint and could be supported with federal funds. The EAB's recommendations were never adopted by HHS. The EAB was dissolved in 1980 and no other EAB was ever chartered, because federal regulations that govern human subject research stipulated that, at the time, federally supported research involving human IVF must be reviewed by an EAB. A so-called de facto moratorium on human IVF research resulted. Other types of embryo research ensuing from the development and use of IVF, such as cloning and stem cells, were therefore also blocked. The de facto moratorium was lifted with the enactment of the National Institutes of Health Revitalization Act of 1993, which nullified the regulatory provision requiring EAB review of IVF proposals. The NIH Human Embryo Research Panel. In response, the NIH established the Human Embryo Research Panel to assess the moral and ethical issues raised by this research, and to develop recommendations for NIH review and conduct of human embryo research. The NIH panel released a report providing guidelines and recommendations on human embryo research in September 1994. The panel identified areas of human embryo research it considered to be unacceptable or to warrant additional review. It determined that certain types of cloning without transfer to the uterus warranted additional review before the panel could recommend whether the research should be federally funded. However, the panel concluded that federal funding for such cloning techniques, followed by transfer to the uterus, should be unacceptable into the foreseeable future. The NIH panel recommended that some areas of human embryo research should be considered for federal funding, including the SC and T stem cells and, under certain limited conditions, embryos created solely for the purpose of research. The panel's report was unanimously accepted by the NIH Advisory Committee to the Director, ACD, on December 2, 1994. After the ACD meeting on December 2, 1994, President Clinton directed NIH not to allocate resources to support the creation of human embryos for research purposes. The President's directive did not apply to research involving so-called spare embryos, those that sometimes remain from clinical IVF procedures performed to assist infertile couples to become parents. Nor did it apply to human parthenotes, eggs that begin development through artificial activation, not through fertilization. Following the Clinton December 2, 1994 directive to NIH, the agency proceeded with plans to develop guidelines to support research using spare embryos. Okay, how many more pages has this got to go? I might just... Okay, yep, I'll just read this one and then I'll stop at the next title and I'll break this into 2 bits. So this will be part 1 and I will do a part 2 as well. Dickey Amendment. NIH plans to develop guidelines on embryo research were halted on January 26, 1996 with the enactment of this here, which contained a rider that affected FY 1996 funding for NIH. The rider prohibited HHS from using appropriated funds for the creation of human embryos for research purposes or for research in which human embryos are destroyed. The same rider, often referred to as the Dickey Amendment, has been attached to the Labor, HHS and Education Appropriations Acts for FY 1997 through to FY 2006. For FY 2006, the provision is found in Section 509 of the Labor, HHS and Education and Related Agencies Appropriations Act 2006. It states that A. None of the funds made available in this Act may be used for 1. The creation of a human embryo or embryos for research purposes, or 2. Research in which human embryo or embryos are destroyed, discarded, or knowingly subject to risk of injury or death greater than that allowed for research on fetuses in utero under 45 CFR 46.204b and Section 498b of the Public Health Service Act 42 USC and on. Okay, so all it does is states that the government can't pay for this, and it does not say anything about privately doing this. Oh, it tries to say, yes, there will be consequences, but as I said, get an Epstein Island and who's going to look? Especially when you put it underground. B. For purposes of this section, the term human embryo or embryos includes any organism not protected as a human subject under 45 CFR 46, the Human Subject Protection Regulations, as of the date of enactment of this Act, that is derived by fertilization, parthenogenesis, cloning, or any other means from one or more human gametes, sperm or egg, or human diploid cells that have 2 sets of chromosomes, such as somatic cells. 1 month after the Dolly announcement, on March the 4th, 1997, President Clinton sent a memorandum to the heads of all executive department and agencies, making it absolutely clear that no federal funds will be used for human cloning. This action extended the congressional ban beyond HHS to all federally supported research. Clinton also urged the private sector to adopt a voluntary ban on the cloning of human beings. So he urged them. He urged he didn't tell them they couldn't do it. He urged them to adopt a voluntary ban. The NIH guidelines on stem cell research, published by the Clinton administration in August 2000, would not have funded research in which human stem cells are used for reproductive cloning of a human. Human stem cells are derived using SCNT, or human stem cells that were derived using SCNT are utilized in a research project. As I said, I'm not sure if Jeffrey Epstein actually did, but I know that he wanted to start his own race. I know that, where he was the father. Let me know what you think down below, guys. I'm only halfway through it, I think. But I'm going to break it up. I don't want it to go too long. I don't want everyone to get bored, but I will start the next one with the actions during the current Bush administration, which obviously this was a long time ago that these papers came out. And I really don't believe they're going to give us the full truth. I don't believe that. But what I would say is, it's funny because you can get little hints of things from here. like I said, with Clinton also urged the private sector. He didn't tell them. He didn't forbid it. He urged them to adopt a voluntary ban on cloning of human beings. That does nothing. So I believe it's happening. I really do believe they are doing this. You let me know what you think down below, guys, and this will be part 1, and I'll do part 2 tomorrow. Thank you all again. I appreciate all of you, and I will talk to you very soon. Okay, guys, have a good one. Bye.